Hey everybody, Radio Geek here. And Apogee, you know Apogee. Yeah, that Apogee. Well, they were awesome enough to give me a Switch key for Wizordum, which has been out on PC via Steam and GOG for a bit now, but it's just coming out on consoles. By the time you're seeing this, it should already be out. The game was developed by Ember Heart Games, who as far as I can tell is a solo developer, and that's always impressive. So why Switch, you ask? Well, why the hell not? Let's talk about it. Wizordum is a relatively new retro-inspired FPS with some very small, very vague, sorta kinda but not really RPG elements. The game offers two characters to play as, the cleric and the sorceress. I mostly played as the cleric for this review, but I did spend some time with the sorceress to get a feel for it, and I kinda wish I would have went that route instead. The cleric gets a mace as a starting weapon, can learn a special ability called Divine Blast, more on that later, and gets full health and armor. The sorceress, on the other hand, starts with a wand, can learn a special ability called Ember Storm, again, more on that later, but only starts with 75% health and 25% armor, but also can move a lot faster. Both classes get access to different spells as the game goes on as well. Actually, they're the same spells, but which ones are spells and which ones are consumable scrolls depends on your class. They basically both get access to the same things except their starting weapon and special ability, but which ones are permanent spells and which ones you can only use as consumables depends on your chosen class. Once you pick your character, the game begins with a bit of background.
In the once peaceful realm of Terra Bruma, the ancient seal was shattered, unleashing an untamed surge of darkness upon the land. Mercenaries from the west, their hearts blackened by chaos, descended upon the unsuspecting towns, pillaging and plundering without mercy. As the darkness crept southward from the treacherous northern mountains, it seeped into the very essence of the land, corrupting the water, the soil, and even the very air itself. Amidst the growing despair, the people of Terra Bruma sent forth a desperate plea, a clarion call that echoed across the realm, reaching the ears of those who could confront the encroaching chaos. The magic wielders of Wizordum, a sanctuary and bastion of arcane knowledge. Responding to the urgent summons, Wizordum dispatched its finest spellcasters from every school of magic, united in their resolve to combat the chaos and unravel its source. Yet despite their valiant efforts, none of these emissaries have returned, their fate shrouded in mystery. You, a young and promising magic wielder, stand as one of the last remaining spellcasters of Wizordum. Before you lies the outskirts of the desolate town of Grimbrook, once a vibrant hub of commerce and life, now reduced to a mere shadow of its former glory, its streets ravaged by the relentless onslaught of chaos.
It's nothing incredibly complex. It's a pretty basic fantasy plot on the surface, but that's all it really needs to be. Because it's not like this is an RPG, it's a retro-inspired FPS with a fantasy theme. It's a bit like if Catacomb 3D and Heretic had a love child. We'll talk about those games at some point, and by the way, fantastic job, Night Dive, but we'll get there at a later time and date. With it being a retro-inspired FPS, there really isn't too much in the way of story. There are lore fragments you can find semi-hidden in each level to give you more of an idea of what happened, but finding them is entirely optional and none of it is especially mind-blowing, but it isn't bad either. It's perfectly serviceable. And there's enough environmental storytelling throughout each level that it stays interesting. The first of which sees you exploring the town of Grimbrook, the sewers underneath the town, the nearby cemetery, and a castle, all while fighting your basic low-level fantasy monsters, your goblins and your giant rats and skeletons and zombies and that kind of thing. There's also these tentacle creatures and also what I think are something akin to shambling mounds in the sewers. And also a couple different types of corrupt mages in later levels. At least I think that's what this one is. I tried to find a list of enemy types in the game, but I couldn't really find anything, so I'm pretty much just going off of best guesses here. The goblins have a few different variations, as do the skeletons, so it's not the same goblin and the same skeleton over and over. That would get boring. Some attack with melee, some with a bow, and some with spells, but here's the thing. Very few of them make any noise. It didn't happen too often, but often for me to note that sometimes an enemy would come up from outside my field of vision and I had no idea because there just wasn't any sort of noise to alert me to anything that was happening. So a lot of times I'd be dead and have no idea what was hitting me or from where. And the melee skeletons have absurdly high attack speeds, so if more than one is on you, it's basically game over. The environments in the chapter all look very good for what the game is trying to be aesthetically. Each map is pretty sizable, with you being able to go inside various buildings to find bronze, silver, and gold keys to progress throughout the map, which is standard FPS stuff. You'll occasionally find the corpses of wizards who came before you that you can loot. Some drop health, some drop ammo, and some drop treasure. Treasure is scattered all around each map, sometimes loosely, sometimes in chests. There are even locked chests that you'll have to find a hidden treasure key to unlock. They're optional, but they've always got more treasure in them than regular chests. Treasure in this game not only serves to increase your total score if you care about that sort of thing, but also has a bigger purpose. Remember those vague, sorta, kinda, but not really RPG elements I mentioned? At the end of each map, you'll be taken to the Sorcerer's Store, where you can spend your hard-earned treasure on upgrades for your weapons and spells and just your general character. These upgrades unlock things like alt fire for a weapon, or the ability to carry more ammo, or more uses of a spell. They're all fairly expensive, so you want to try to find as much treasure in a given map as you can. Some maps even have these things called Piggletons hidden in them. Find all of them and you'll be taken to a hidden bonus level, where you kill as many pig things as you can within the time limit for lots of extra treasure. Also popping up from time to time is this game's version of the Loot Goblin. It runs around laughing maniacally, and you can damage and kill it for a bunch of extra treasure as well. The second chapter sees you going through the forests outside of town, as well as a big warship and a swamp and another castle. The same enemy types are all present and accounted for, but now there's also giant spiders, these evil sentient mushroom things, and lots more types of undead to deal with. Of particular note are these banshees who will wail at you and then dive in your general direction. They're easy to avoid, but if they miss you, they'll just disappear and go back to where they started. They can be a real pain in the ass to nail down, and I had to restart one area where I needed to kill all the enemies in a room to proceed, only to not be able to find one banshee because she just would not show up. The third chapter sees you on snow-capped mountains, inside of a mine, and into the Chaos Realm itself. All of the previous enemies make a return, of course, and there's a whole heap of new ones as well. Blue goblins, red goblins, goblins in helicopters, which, hey, sure, why not? Airships are a pretty common thing in a lot of fantasy these days. Hell, Castlevania 64 had skeletons riding on motorcycles with miniguns attached, and I love that, so bring it on. There's also frost golems, fire golems, imps, and I'm pretty sure these are supposed to be dragons. In fact, if I were to go down the list of every enemy type in the game and what they do, we'd be here all day because the enemy variety in this game is absolutely astounding. I love it. The levels in the game are pretty long, which may or may not be a bad thing for you depending on how much time you have in your hands, but they're all pretty well designed. They can be pretty easy to get lost in, but your map helps, even if sometimes it isn't the easiest thing in the world to read. Most times there will be a marker that shows where the game wants you to go next, but you still have to figure out how to get there. It's not like Skyrim's don't bother exploring on your own, go right exactly here quest arrows. Some of the levels will dynamically shift at certain times, with buildings or parts of the environment collapsing to open up new pathways. It's a nice touch, I really like it. Each map is full of secrets to find, and they can be pretty tricky. It's usually more complex than just spotting a misaligned wall texture or wall humping throughout the entire level. A lot of secrets are opened up by puzzles. Some of these lore fragments you can find will give you hints. This one here with a bunch of switches marked by yellow paint, only to open up to a small handful of coins. I thought that was pretty funny. Each map also has a map which will reveal all the secrets on your map. They're just marked where the secret is, but you still have to figure out how to get there and how to open it up, so it doesn't make things too easy. And the music in each level is fantastic. Great work all around. Really nails the fantasy atmosphere, and it isn't just some cheap MIDI throwback thing. The weapons all sound pretty good too. I think the enemy sound design is, well, it could use some work. It's a crapshoot whether an enemy will alert you to its presence with a noise. Some will every time, but particularly with the skeletons and the goblins, sometimes they make no noise at all until they hit you. At the end of each chapter, as you'd expect, is a boss fight. But these are more than just circle strafe and shoot them until they die fights. Bosses have actual mechanics to them that you have to figure out, and they can be pretty challenging even on lower difficulty settings. The second and third boss even have multiple phases, and no, you can't save in between phases, at least not on console. That would save a lot of time and make the fights less tedious, so I hope that restriction gets lifted at some point. But overall, I think the bosses are all pretty well designed and generally fun to fight. It just sucks having to start the whole thing all over again if you just happen to die right before you're about to kill it. So let's talk about the game's weapons. The cleric and the sorceress start with different weapons, but the rest of their weapons are the same. The cleric starts with the mace, which is fine. It's actually pretty decent. You can pick up raw mana to make it stronger, and every time you hit an enemy with it, it depletes some raw mana. Kind of like ammo, but for a melee weapon, which is pretty unnecessary. It's a melee weapon. The sorceress gets the wand. If you've ever played Heretic, you know what that does. It's the same thing. It's basically your average FPS pistol type weapon. This also can be enhanced with raw mana. Then there's the fire rings, which let you pump out little fireballs. They're pretty effective. I like them. The secondary fire, once unlocked, lets you do more like a burning hands kind of thing, turning the weapon into more of a flamethrower. You basically have to be right up on an enemy for that to be effective, but it does a lot of damage. The Frostweaver is great, probably my favorite weapon. It's a rapid-fire wand that quickly freezes enemies. You can use the alt fire to shatter enemies once they're frozen, or if you don't have that, you can just smack them with any other weapon. It borders on overpowered. I love it. The Spell Striker is, well, it's a gun. It's a hand cannon. It's pretty good, but that's all there is to it. It's a gun. The alt fire is just a bigger projectile. The Pyroblast is fireball. You're casting fireball. It's basically a rocket launcher. Alt fire turns it into a proximity mine of sorts. The Shock Gauntlets are cool. They look like the ones from Heretic, but function more like Quake's lightning gun. Except the game doesn't give a shit whether or not you're standing in water. The Feywood crossbow is the same crossbow from Heretic or Dusk. It only fires one projectile, but it pierces through enemies, so if you get a bunch of them in a line, you can take them all out in one shot. It's pretty powerful on its own. The Chaos Staff is cool. It's kind of like the mace from Heretic, except instead of balls of steel, it fires out random bits of energy. It makes short work of any low to mid-tier enemy, but it also eats ammo. I like it. Alt fire is also just a bigger projectile. And then there's your Grimoire. This is the last weapon you get, and you get it late game. It's your BFG. It's slow as hell to cast, but it'll delete pretty much all but the strongest enemies in your line of sight. Very powerful, but ammo for it is pretty much non-existent, and you get it so late in the game that you barely even ever get to use it. You also get scrolls and potions to use in an inventory, but using them kinda sucks, especially in the heat of the moment. The UI for using them on console is just not very good. To cycle through them, you have to hit left on your D-pad until you come up on the one you want, but unless you have 3 arms, this also means you aren't moving. So if you need to cycle to a healing potion real quick in the middle of a fight, good luck with that. There's a weapon wheel that stops time while you're selecting a weapon, and I wish the item selection did that too, or add another wheel for item selection like Quake 2 did. Or both. Definitely both. Both is good. Aside from potions and other items that heal you and make you resistant to damage, there's a poison vial, and if you've ever played Hexen as the cleric, you know exactly how that works. You throw it and it releases a big fart cloud that damages nearby enemies. It doesn't stun lock them in this one though, and it can still hurt you if you get too close to it, so don't do that. And then there's the spells. First for the cleric is Repulsion. Guess what that does? You can slam enemies into walls with it to damage them, but that's about it. Hellfire unleashes a wave of fire all around you, which is great if you're surrounded by lower tier enemies, but not effective against much else. Holy Nova heals you for a little bit, and if there are undead near you, it heals you for more. And Wizard's Wrath increases your damage output for a few seconds. For the Sorceress, first is Blink. This lets you basically teleport forward a short distance, and if you move through an enemy or an object, you could do a bunch of damage to it. Great for low-tier enemies. Then there's Frost Breath, which freezes enemies in a short distance in front of you that can be shattered. Again, great for low-tier enemies, but doesn't really do too much to anything stronger. Arcane Shield makes you invincible for about 5 seconds, which can be really useful in a pinch, but doesn't last long enough to make a huge difference. And then there's Spell Haste, which increases your fire rate. Each of these is available to each class, but if it isn't available as a spell for that class, they'll be able to use it as a consumable scroll. Both classes also get their own special ability as well. The Cleric gets Divine Blast, which when fired at enemies will hurt them and heal you for a little bit. Useful if you're desperate for healing. The Sorceress gets Ember Storm. Ember Storm is awesome. Fire emanates from you in every direction and damages enemies within a certain radius. Extremely useful, especially if you're surrounded. Now that that's all out of the way, I want to talk about my one big gripe about the Switch port. The performance and the loading times. Okay, that's 2 gripes, but they're basically the same thing. Now, Apogee was gracious enough to give me a pre-release Switch key for this game, and that's what I've been using for this video's footage. I am very well aware that the Switch's hardware is, well, it's kind of crap, but it's the only modern console I have. I bought it because I wanted to play Breath of the Wild, and I just kind of ended up buying more games for it as time went on because I like it. It's not exactly a powerhouse, we all know that, but even then, with how lightweight this game is, it still sometimes struggles to run on the Switch. Most times it's fine, but more times than it should, frames will dip, especially right after you load a game, but also just occasionally throughout the game as well, and not even when there's a lot going on screen, just whenever it wants to. The game even crashed on me a few times, and then there's the loading times. Holy shit, they're bad. Again, you could argue that this is because it's running on a Switch, and that's fair enough, but it also handles other games around this size a lot better. If it can handle Doom Eternal without much problem, it should be able to handle this no sweat. This is all pre-release stuff, so it's entirely possible that a patch is incoming to help fix some of these issues, and by the time you're watching this, that hypothetical patch could already be out, and I hope that's the case. And to those of you who are typing, "Just play on PC, bruh," delete your comment unless you're going to buy every single person a PC. I do have this game on PC, and it does run better, but that's not the point. Not everyone has a PC, not everyone can get a PC, and not everyone wants a PC. That's why this game is out on consoles now. And also Mac, if that's your jam. More games being made available to more people is not a bad thing. One thing that is exclusive to the PC port is the level editor. Yeah, this game comes packed with an in-game level editor for making your own maps. It's actually really intuitive and easy to use. I haven't done anything beyond just messing around with it yet. I'm in the middle of working on a Duke Nukem 3D map, and that's taking way longer than I ever wanted it to because I didn't think it out ahead of time. I'm just kind of doing what I think sounds good at the time and designing as I go. I'm almost done with it, so maybe sometime soon I can try making some actual levels with this thing. It's pretty cool. Levels you make can be uploaded and played by anyone too, and I've played some pretty neat ones. Overall, Wizordum has some really good level design, great art. By the way, did I mention a lot of the art for this was done by Dennis Lubey? Yeah, motherfucker worked on Ultima and shit. Pretty much every Ultima box art you will ever find was done by him. Really cool shit. And also the music by Tim Stoney is fucking wonderful. It does a fantastic job of setting the tone and the mood for this game. Control stick aiming is always kind of crappy at the best of times. And this game doesn't even take advantage of the Switch's gyro aiming, which probably would have made a lot of this go a lot smoother, if I'm being honest. So there is that. The 2 separate classes is a really nice touch, but I do worry that even with how fun the Sorceress is to play, the reduced health and armor are going to make new players turn away from that class. Look, Wizordum is cool, and you should absolutely play it. This game is wonderful. I had a blast for the most part. But I think some more stuff needs to be done to it to balance it out a bit more, at least on consoles. It's been out on PC through Steam or GOG for a little while now, but it only just hit consoles, so I have hope. It's not without its flaws, but hey, you show me a perfectly flawless game, and I will show you a purple flying unicorn. Thank you once again to Apogee for the Switch key. You guys rock. I recently was given a key for another indie game, not by Apogee, so I'm going to start working on that video, and then very soon I want to start working on that Bloodlines video. Once that's done, I'll start working on whatever Xbox 360 game you guys want me to talk about next to continue that series. You may have heard that YouTube views have basically been down across the board, and there's a million conflicting reports as to why, and I'm not smart enough for that conversation. But if you would all be so kind as to leave a like, a comment, subscribe if you haven't already, and share the video, that won't even take a single minute of your time, and it would help me out immensely. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you in the next one.